joining us today. And thank you to everyone who's taking time out of their day to get to know one of our artists a little bit better, and to also, hopefully feel inspired and have at this creative conversation. Craig, could you introduce yourself and share a little bit about who you are?
You say you want me to share who I am?
Yes, please. Yes, if you could share, give a little introduction, that would be wonderful.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be asked to be the artist here for this brown bag lunch. So it's quite a privilege. Art is such an integral part of me. It's always kind of hard to talk about it because I just assume everybody is like that. I'll go backwards. I have been a retired elementary art teacher for 10 years, and now I describe myself as an artist bum. I spend much of my time in my clay studio or on the tennis courts. For 30 some years, I worked in the Lanphier School District teaching kids how to finger paint. I still do a little teaching at the Flint Institute of Arts. I found myself in Michigan. My wife and I are Hoosiers. After going to Ball State University, I moseyed my way up to Cranbrook Academy of Art and received an MFA under Richard DeVore in ceramics. And I've never left Michigan and never intend to. I don't know what else you would like me to share, or if you have questions, if that sparks interest.
Thank you, Craig, for sharing. And I just wanted to give our guests a little bit of context too about how we've worked with you. So we've worked with you in a few different capacities. So we have some of your beautiful functional ceramic pieces in our retail gallery and in our holiday show, which we're installing this week. And then we've also worked with you as a public artist for Art Path as well, which is our public art project on the Lansing River Trail. And so we get to kind of see some different facets of your work, both like larger scale and some of your more intricate clay pieces. And this is sort of a general question just to kind of get us started.
I would say that the Art Path has been really rewarding for me. I've been on for about 3 different years. Mm-hmm. And the beauty of it, it's forced me to get out of my clay studio. And although the pieces have had some clay in them, it's encouraged me to expound on what I'm saying in my clay on a different venue. So, using new materials, trying new things. At that old state of life I'm in, it's been really invigorating. So I appreciate that opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Craig. I appreciate that. Yeah, so we can talk a little bit about public art. Is that something that you've done since you work in both spaces, gallery spaces, make functional pottery and public art? Is public art something that you have explored throughout your career, or is that something that you were sort of interested in later in life?
Clay is my primary medium, and generally clay is not huge. I consider myself really a hand builder. These last few years, I've delved into the pottery on the wheel, but I'm really hand build. When I was working as an art teacher in my school district, I did many ceramic murals with children that were placed outside. And although I've been retired 30 years or 10 years, and some of those murals are 40 years old, they're still stand the test of time. So there's something positive about doing, I call it private art in public spaces. but I actually think the art path, I've done a few, but not much. Art path has been a good invigorating way for me to really delve into that. So,
Thank you. And speaking of some of these community murals that you've done with the children, what drew you to teaching? Was that something that you were always interested in?
never, 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 never. I never wanted to be a teacher. After Cranbrook, I got a job at the Flint Institute of Arts, and I directed the studio program. And I found that we started offering youth classes and younger classes, and I taught a few of those. And after about 13 years, I realized, I hated to say it, I'm really good at teaching kids, and I found it easy. So at that time, I wanted to broaden my stage, and so I wanted to get in public schools where I had a much larger audience of children, and hence that's what I did. And actually, since retirement, I'm back at the Flint Institute of Arts. I teach very little classes, but they're youth classes. So no, I actually did not think I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted no part of it. But I found it's not work. It's like being in my studio. It was not work teaching kids, and it's not work being in the studio.
Oh, I love that. I am always I find myself invigorated by the way children interact with art and how they see things, I think, without pretension and without maybe some of the baggage that adults bring to the table. And we had some very, very little children in the gallery recently, for maybe, between 4 and 6, something like that. And I felt a little bit nervous about how was I going to talk to them about this exhibit, and how do I translate these ideas to them? But they just picked up on things so quickly and noticed, and were so observant about different things that the artist was using, and it was really wonderful.
Um, don't wait 13 years to say this is what I need to do.
What ages were you teaching?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What ages of students were you teaching?
I taught K-5.
Okay.
And I also did some preschool. I had a wonderful position that was kind of an art consultant, art teacher, and I loved the job, and I think they loved me. The middle school principal kept saying, "How can I get you to the middle school?" And I said, "Union says you can anytime you want, but I don't want to leave the elementary. If I was only going to teach one age bracket, it would be kindergarten." I mean, honestly, you just hold up a red crayon and they clap. So, it's but it's a joy. It was seriously considering how I would retire and find anything to fill that gap, but I have had no trouble with that. My days are full. I work in the studio every day, not full time, but it's a pretty full day.
That's wonderful. And you talked about how clay is your primary medium.
Yes.
What drew you to clay? Is that something that you worked, that's what your MFA, I understand, was in clay, but was there a teacher or a moment or, something that sort of drew you to that medium?
I assumed you'd ask that, and that is as difficult to answer as why I'm an artist or why I was a teacher. I could probably give some intellectual answers about the attraction of clay, but I took all the basic classes in college: drawing, painting, weaving. The clay just resonated immediately. And that was my first clay class was in 1971. And there's been very few days that I have not in some ways interacted with clay, either through seeing it, working with it, going to museums. And when you read about artists that are in clay, you'll read about people that were studying pre-med or anything, and they took a clay class as a whim, and that's all they wrote. They never left clay. I suppose it is that tactile quality that is it's attracted humans from day one. So I really can't really say why. I just know it's a passion. So
Sure. I took clay class really, really young. My mom signed my sisters and I up for, at like a local community space. And I was maybe 4, and we got to play on the wheel. And I mean, everything I made was pretty horrendous looking, but I absolutely loved it. And at different points in my life, I've gone back to.
I have some grandkids. Like I'm an old. I should talk about my grandkids. 2 of them, when they come to my house, they always go to the studio. One of them gravitates right to clay, and the other one is not clay. The other one works in drawing and painting. So they're just like you. There's something that attracts some people, that three-dimensionalness or something.
Yeah, I think when you were talking about how tactile it is, that was something, and watching the form shift like under your hands and working on the wheel versus working on the slab. I haven't explored different types of clay, certainly to the extent that you have. We have some really beautiful, some of your functional pottery that has that beautiful black clay here in the, yes, in the gallery.
There's the black clay. My wife said yesterday, no more black clay because it's a mess. It's on everything. And I washed one of her sweatshirts that had my clothes in it. It's incredible. It's on my fingers. It's on everything.
Oh no.
It stains everything. Stains everything. They told me when I bought it, it even stains your hopes and dreams. And that's an understatement. My studio is a mess. But the clay, God, look how beautiful that is.
It is beautiful. So for guests who haven't had the honor of seeing it in person yet, when Craig brought this work to the gallery, our team fell in love with it, and none of us realized at first glance that that wasn't the glaze, that the black we were seeing was actually the clay, and it's really striking.
One of the you had sent some questions for me to ponder, and one of them was on influences. And my wife and I are travelers. We travel a lot, and we traveled to a lot of the countries that I have been inspired by. And one is South America, the pre-Columbian pottery that was all hand built. And we were in Peru, and I saw a culture of pottery that I'd never seen, never heard of. It's called Chimu, CHIMU culture, and their pottery is black. It just looks like the black clay I'm using, and they're all hand-built pieces. It's just, I thought about that just recently when I was thinking about this talk, that's been maybe 10 years ago, but when I saw that Chimu pottery, I go, what is this? I've never seen, never introduced to it. But that resonated. So. And
someone from our chat was asking, Craig, the black clay, is that like naturally that color? Is it dyed? They want to know what it's made of.
It's not natural. It's I buy the clay. It's from the Laguna Clay Company in California. Okay. And you can actually look at their website, and they put chemicals in it, manganese and some other stuff to make it black. So no, it's not drugged. It's not dug. It's just no.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
But if you're local, who is handling it, as I buy some supplies from Runyon Pottery Supply in Clio, and they mix their own clay for schools, and they have Laguna black clay out there.
Oh, great.
If anybody's interested in experimenting with it, it goes to cone 5. Okay. So anyhow.
And Craig, for those of the folks that are not on the call, can you explain, sometimes potters will talk about cone 5 or cone 10. For those who are not at all familiar with firing, can you explain that?
Clay is fired to different temperatures in a kiln. And when it's vitrified, it's the strongest. It's very strong when clay is vitrified. So the low fire clay at the low temperatures is called terracotta. And that looks like the red flower pots that you get at Home Depot or any place. The other end is white porcelain clay, and that can be fired to very, very hot temperatures. I don't have any right, but I use porcelain also. So that would be fired to like cone 11, very hot. And so halfway in between, this black clay has been formulated to be the strongest at cone 5. And listen to this. When you get that nice ping, the clay is very vitrified and is very strong. So each clay body has a different strength. If you dig clay up here in Michigan, which there's lots of clay in Michigan, it generally can only be fired to very, very low temperature. If you fire it hot, it would actually melt or sag. So.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's so interesting. Let me go back to, have you ever tried like harvesting your own clay?
When I was teaching, yes, a little bit with students. In Madison Heights, they're putting in a new water line, and there are pieces of clay bigger than houses they dug up. And I processed that clay to use with students, but there was some impurities in it that you couldn't fire it, it would break apart. But yeah, anybody that wants to walk through a creek bed, you'll probably find clay, or dig in your garden. So there's a lot of clay in Michigan.
Yeah, it's that's one of the things that will, we as a public institution that works with the community will, we work with all kinds of folks, and we've worked with people who weren't familiar with the idea that clay is something that comes from the earth. That this is it's something that's really something that we're walking on essentially, and so it's really fascinating when sometimes we get to work with people and have this conversation when you think about what it takes to make a mug, these processes.
Yep. Well, the Native Americans used clay, some in Michigan, but that would be fired to a very low temperature and kind of like a campfire almost, and it did not reach those high temperatures. So it was vitrified, and it could be used as cooking vessels. But yep.
Oh, that's so interesting. We go back here. And what are you working on in your studio currently? Are you making more like functional pottery? Are you working? You had mentioned at the beginning when we were chatting that you have some things that are quite large.
Yep. So I've been working in clay for some 50 some years. I've actually only have two themes that I continue to go back and forth on. One is hand-built animal pieces that speak about social concerns that I see. And the second one I just call my black and whites. I can't work on them both at the same time. Right now I'm deep into my black and white pieces because of this black clay. So I've been making those hand-built pieces, some work on the wheel. I've also started making pottery, which I've never done, but my pots are not, hopefully, the traditional pots. I hope they're distinctive and they reflect my own individual personality. That's what I've strived to do with my pots. I'm actually working on an idea for next year art path. Can you influence the judges at all? Yeah, and there's a show. I'm a member of the Buckham Art Gallery in Flint. It's the longest serving member-run gallery in Michigan, over 40 years. And there's a competitive show coming up that's it's called anybody that wants to enter it's coming up soon, called Hair and Teeth. And the most repulsive art I've ever seen is mourning art, M-O-U-R-N. It's where in the Victorian age, people would cut the hair of the dead and weave it into flowers and put it in the picture frames. It's repulsed me. But I've decided to use that idea and enter this show, but took these little ugly trolls that you have with the pinky hair, and I'm developing an idea that's also incredibly ugly. So yeah, that's what I'm kind of, I've got multiple things going on in my studio as we speak. I know what else I have. I draw all the time. Sketchbook all the time, draw all the time. And I just finished a 2-year project that I've been working on. It's a small book. It's written and illustrated by me. I'm passionate about that. Any publishers out there listening, give me a call. I have written and published books, self-published, and that may happen to this one, but I think it's got enough that it may go beyond that. So drawing and writing, I draw and write all the time.
That's great. I love hearing that. I think that's such a great practice for artists, both established artists and emerging artists, just to keep creating, keep making marks, keep drawing, because it just keeps those juices flowing. I wanted to.
I cannot imagine not having a sketchbook. You know, when you leave the homes and where's my purse or my billfold, where's my car keys? Even worse than that is, Carol, have you seen my sketchbook? Where is it goes every place with me, which is my notes, my drawings, anything. It's just inconceivable for a creative person not to carry that. In my pocket is always a pencil. So
I love that. Craig, I wanted to go back to something that you had sort of briefly touched on in terms of sort of the social conscious work. I know for ArtPath, your work is very socially conscious. That's like a thread that I see through your work, kind of thinking, having conversations maybe about climate change and things of that nature. Could you speak to that a little bit?
The animal pieces that I've been working with for over 50 years, it wasn't until quite a bit into my career as an artist that I saw that connection, what I was after. It was subconscious. The clay animal pieces, again, this is consciously have spoken about genetics, playing around with genetics, factory farming. More recently, the pieces have spoken about diminishing habitat. So diminishing habitat was in the first art path where my piece was quite large. It was on the demise of the monarch butterflies. But I've been able to carry that thread into my pottery. In fact, actually, this cup right here, this pottery cup is black with a white glaze, but their monarch butterfly design, there is no monarch there. It's vacant, and it speaks of that. Hopefully, the piece is beautiful, but it actually has the cup becomes a canvas in which I can speak about those kind of things. The second art path dealt with offering participants, people on the path, to make a statement. And the statement could be about the pandemic, if that's what they so chose. And last year's art path even spoke about the plastic that is infiltrating the environment. Even though I've been retired for 10 years, each year I've written a Michigan Council for the Art grant and gone back to school of my school district on a special project. Last year's special project was on single-use plastic, that every child K through 5 made a self-portrait from a recycled, from a water bottle that would be gone to the landfill. So there's, as I'm a mature artist, I'm proud to be able to see this dream of connection of thoughts between teaching, pottery, and hand-built, and even environmental pieces like the art path. So anyway.
Thank you. So I wasn't aware that that your like functional pottery was still speaking to these larger issues in that way.
I can't, I see a lot of potters and I see a lot of pottery students and they make cups and I go, why would you make a cup? Why wouldn't you take advantage of this? I mean, it's even if their statement doesn't have to be as bold as mine, but it should still make a statement, even if it's just your personality. So, I mean, anyway, yes. In fact, usually with my work, I have a little, when I sell it, I have a little piece of paper just describing what you're looking at. So anyway.
I love that. No, it's giving me, I'm going to make sure, we share this with our team because, I mean, I think putting your money towards buying the work of an artist, of a local organization is already making a statement. And then when you're making the active choice to support something like this, I think it's even deeper. So
I had since I'm in Flint, I live outside of Flint, but Flint is like my hometown. During the water crisis, I organized a show at Buckham Gallery where artists responded to the water crisis. And the work I made, actually, this is a candle holder, but here's the Flint water tower turned into a skull. There's a candle in there. Down here is the Flint River, little water bottle floating away, little silver representing the fiasco began trying to save money. And the work has resonated. I still make some of this work based on the Flint water crisis. And 25% of it I give to flintkids.org. So, I mean, John Hardum, who was the founder of Empty Bowls, was a Michigan artist, Michigan teacher. We were talking once and he said, art can save lives. I thought, what? Art is fun. But as I thought about it, art can save lives. And you don't have to be a social activist. Like, I don't consider myself that way, but you can still respond to those things.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Greg. I just wanted to let our guests know that we did drop your website into the chat. So if anybody wanted to kind of peruse and see some of the images of Craig's work or learn a little bit more about him, that is an option in the chat. And then again, just remind our guests, if anyone has a question, please feel free to put it in the chat and I can relay that to Craig as well. So I'm just going back to my list of questions here, Craig. As an artist, speaking of your practice, are you more sort of structured or free-flowing in the way that you make? Do you have an idea before you go into the studio of, I'm working on preparing for this show, making a certain quantity of work, or does the inspiration strike and that moves you?
I'm going to get my other sketchbook just a minute.
Sure. And while Craig is doing that, I just wanted to let everybody know, remind you all again that if you want to see some of Craig's work in person, that we'll have a beautiful collection of his pottery at our holiday show, which we'll have some of that work online, and of course, a really beautiful collection in person in our gallery space.
I do not consider myself a free flow artist. I don't think I ever have been, but as I age, I have less time. So this is a page, this typical sketchbook page. This is what I'm considering for Art Path. That's almost not quite a year away.
Right.
As I mosey. So, I mean, my sketches and my writings continue to, in my studio work, what I'm working on right now is pieces like this. So I will sketch them out and consider them. So when I actually go to the studio, I look for the surprise element, like, oh, that's very cool. I'm going to go with that. But I don't go down there. I know many artists do. I do not. I pretty much, before I get up and pull on my pants and start my coffee in bed, I consider how I'm going to spend the day and what needs to happen. So, no, I am not a free flow artist. Even though I'm a old hippie, I'm pretty structured.
I've actually heard that from a lot of artists when we've been doing these talks, where whether it's for some artists, it's the medium that they work in, so uh, if they're working in oil, for example, like that medium will sort of needs a certain timeline to work within. But I've also worked with or spoken with a number of artists who said it's carving out that time to go into the studio every day is a way to just keep them motivated. And I think also maybe making that time kind of sacred so it doesn't get filled with our other sort of day-to-day obligations.
That is, I think I'd be like that anyway, but one of the benefits to going to Cranbrook Academy of Art was that during that 2 years, you develop that structure, because there's not really classes at Cranbrook. You have a studio and they have critiques. And that's pretty unusual. It's like seeing a blank piece of paper if you don't draw. What do I draw? And at Cranbrook, you go to the studio and you'd make stuff, but it's like there's no bells to say the class is over. There's no phys ed class. After 2 years, that becomes pretty much ingrained in you and really never leaves. And my studio is like a magnet that is always, I'm compelled to go. I do other things. I do lots of other things, but they are only a distraction. I play tennis most mornings, but it's a distraction from the studio. Great distraction, but it is a distraction.
I'm glad that you brought up Cranbrook. I've met a few artists who've gone through Cranbrook. I love visiting the campus. It's so beautiful. I think it has sort of a reputation for being certainly an excellent school, and also maybe a little bit more conceptual. Did going to Cranbrook affect your work, or did you work with anyone there who was sort of foundational to the artist that you've become?
Yeah, the students, it's got quite small classes. There's maybe 15 students in ceramics. I actually came up because I studied at Ball State with George Timmock, who is actually from Flint, and I was his first student, but he went to Cranbrook, and the relation I had with him ended up, I wanted to study with the teacher at the ceramics department during that time, Richard DeVore. Instructors that teach there have profound effect on their students. And so he did. At the same time, in some ways I'm rebelling against Richard, who died a few years ago, had a retrospective at Cranbrook Academy. And I went down and saw it. And almost all his work was very similar. He had one thought and he delved into that. And I realized I don't want to die with just one thought. And once again, thank you, Art Path. Thank you, other things that I've continued to push myself beyond what I really am comfortable with. So, but yeah, the teacher I worked under, profound effect. It influenced my life every day a little bit. So it was fortunate. My wife and I recently got married right before we moved to Michigan, and she worked in the museum. So she too got to, it's an intense experience. They said, if you're married at Cranbrook, you will be married forever or you'll get a soon divorce. And here we've been married over 50 years. It was good she was there. She could see the intensity.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can imagine. Grad school is already intensive, but Cranbrook, yeah, has that reputation. But for your wife, I hope that she got to enjoy just For our guests who have not been there, I think the grounds of Cranbrook are so inspiring, and
It's a
beautiful.
unique place. One time, I heard this later. Carol said Richard DeVore, my instructor, came over and talked to her and said Craig may have a hard time because I just tore his work apart. And so he gave her a kind of a heads up that um, he'll be doing some deep thinking.
It's so hard. I mean, I've gone through a fair number of critiques in class, and we do here right now when we're installing a show and we're going back and forth and um, throwing out ideas and breaking them apart and challenging each other, and it can be difficult, but it also can really help you grow.
Those conversations are so few and far between. To have somebody that's knowledgeable how to have them, maybe knows what you have been doing.
Mhm.
If you can have those, if you can have a group of people that you can have those, you're fortunate.
I agree. So Craig, can you speak to how you stay motivated and inspired over time? I know you've talked a little bit about this with having sort of different opportunities, excuse me, such as Art Path come your way. Um, but can you speak to how you stay motivated?
Once again, that's such basic to me. I don't think I would have any trouble ever staying motivated. Um, but if I was going to say, travel has been incredibly important. As I've traveled, I don't just travel. I seek out artists. I seek out ceramicists. If we're in a town, when we were in Chile a few years ago, I kept seeing this pottery that I'd never seen before. It's from the Diaguita culture. And finally, I found a guy that knew about it, and he took us to some sacred sites and got us into the museum. And so that's important. The first art museum I ever went to is when I went to Ball State University, the art museum there. And as soon as I walked in, it was a spiritual experience. And that has never changed. I worked some at the Flint Institute of Arts, but when I walk through the galleries, it's a sacred experience. Looking at the work, thinking about it, handling it. So I don't know if
That's
that
really
helps.
cool. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I did read on your website that yeah, that you and Carol have traveled and sought out different ceramic artists, and that's brought you to Asia, South Africa, as you've mentioned. Um, do you want to speak a little bit to your travels?
Um, like I said, I write all the time. I publish numerous articles. When we were in Africa, I kept seeing these big hand-built pots. Who made these? Who made these? Finally, a guy in the bar said, my grandmother makes them. We ended up saying, I want to go there. So they took us to her clay hut. She didn't know we were coming. She was about my age, and she was making these big pots. We caused a distraction because everybody there was black. And she let me handle her clay. A little boy we filled her hut, tripped and fell onto her pot like he's sitting in a chair. When we got ready to leave, I gave her, she took us outside and showed us these pots she fired. She left them in the ashes because she said, if I leave them in the ashes, the elephants won't bother them because they burnt their trunks too many times, even though the ashes were cool. And I said, where do you get your clay? And she said, the bugs, the termite mounds were as big as her house. That's clay. She'd just go get clay from the termite mounds. So when we left, I bought a little pot from her. She didn't even have any for sale, but I gave her quite a bit extra money for the pot I destroyed. And she cried, and this interpreter later said that she's raising her grandkids because her son and granddaughter had died of it wasn't AIDS, but it was something like that. And the money was, so when I wrote the article, I got a small honorarium. I had the money sent to her. So, I mean, here we're worlds away, completely opposite, but that I could connect with a potter that she gets her clay from the termite mounds. I mean, and here I'm buying black clay. What a rewarding experience.
That sounds amazing.
As I traveled, I've always, you always got travel guides, or you go in a hotel and is there any ceramicists here that I can meet? And I will pick and push their brains. And usually there's usually people that you can go talk to.
Oh, that's beautiful. I spent a little time in India, and you see people, and there are areas where, potters are making these vessels and then having them out to dry.
Hold on just a minute.
Oh, sure.
This is the pot that I bought from the African lady. Her name was Niece. You can see the black because it was fired in with wood.
Okay.
She had to go find a pot. I said, how much is this? She said 50 cents.
Oh my goodness.
That's what I said. So that's where, I thought I'm not leaving here with just giving her 50 cents.
Oh my gosh, no. That's so beautiful. Did she do that on a wheel, or is that hand built?
No, this is all hand built. The sad part of the sad part of the story is this all relates to plastic. They don't use those pots anymore because if you're going to get water from the river, what's easier, clay or plastic? But she makes these big pots now, and mostly what they use them for is to make alcohol stills. They cook corn in them to make corn whiskey. I think it's way of the life now.
Sure. Wow. Oh my gosh. I just wanted to, again, remind anybody if they had any questions. We're going to be wrapping up shortly with Craig, just to kind of honor everyone's time here that they've taken, perhaps their lunch hour with us. Craig, as we wrap up, can you let us know what kinds of things that you are hoping to work on in the future?
I don't see myself changing the directions of my work. I hope that it evolves, and I hope I learn to speak more clearly and eloquently, not necessarily literally, so somebody could go, I can read this pot now, but very clearly and eloquently. You continue to go deeper into yourself. That I take pots out of the kiln and I use them just like now. And by doing that, I can see this is what's got to happen next. Most of it's not conscious. Most of it is just like, I know what's got to happen next. And then I'm excited to make the next body of work changes and grows. So
I love that. I am just gonna send everyone a link to our website with information for our holiday show, so that you can mark your calendars, come in and see some of Craig's work. That'll open November 2nd, or right around the corner. And then one last question for you, Craig, is what advice would you give someone to inspire them to create? Well, whether that is someone who's young or somebody who is, in a more mature stage of their life, who maybe is interested, but for whatever reason is intimidated or nervous to start. What advice would you give them?
Well, supposedly Pablo Picasso said, good artists borrow, real artists steal. I would encourage you to be a thief. No, don't go to the Lansing Gallery and steal my work. What he means was, You go into artist studios, you go to museums. I don't do social media, but you go to Pinterest, you look at ideas and you steal those ideas.
Mhm.
Is that stealing? No, because when you make those ideas, they become your own. So you can't work in a vacuum. I've told you I travel a lot. I go into museums, I go to galleries. Um, so you hopefully that will inspire. And then what do you do next? Take a class. There's many places to take classes. The Flint Institute of Arts is a great one. So is the Lansing. The Lansing's got lots of classes around. Um, I think it is in our genetic DNA to be makers, especially in this time of social media. I think you're depriving your genetic disposition by not making stuff. I would certainly encourage you to flesh out your whole personality and become a maker.
I think that's fantastic advice. And as Craig mentioned, we do have some workshops here at the gallery. Our friends at Reach Art Studio have amazing art classes in Lansing. Of course, the FIA, if you have not been, treat yourself and go to the Flint Institute of Arts. It's stunningly beautiful and just such an incredible experience to be able to go through there. Thank you again, Craig, so much. I could talk to you all day.
Oh, I could listen to you, Michelle. Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure having you here, sharing your stories with us. I'm going to go back downstairs and look at your work and share with my team what I've learned. And I want to thank everyone who joined us today for taking time out of their day to spend to hear this conversation. And please stay tuned for just upcoming events here at the gallery. We're not going to have artist talks November and December because we have our holiday show and we're going to kind of focus a little bit on that. But we have a lot of upcoming things happening. Craig, what is the best place for our guests to keep up with your work? I know you said you're not on social media. Is it at Buckham Gallery? Is it through your website?
No, it's kind of hard sometimes to find my work. When I get off of here, I will be taking some work again for the holiday show at the Detroit Artist Market. I usually have one or two pieces on display at the Flint Institute of Arts. They have a space that artists can display, the Lansing Art Gallery.
Mm-hmm.
I occasionally do art fair type shows, but I don't really have a gallery. Any galleries out there want to handle my work? Good luck.
Well, thank you so much, Craig. Well, yeah, you can stop by the gallery. Certainly, if you're local, like I said, you can find you'll be able to find Craig's work on our website. We're updating that for the holiday show, and thank you all again for joining us. And please continue following the gallery's social media, our newsletter, and our website to stay tuned with everything that's happening.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Bye-bye.